Hi friends, Laura Zam here. I am a wellness expert and author of a book called The Pleasure Plan. Today we're going to be talking about how to get out of our heads using a pleasure technique that just incorporates everyday pleasure. It's called pleasure layering. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back and we're talking about how to get out of our heads. Oh my gosh, who doesn't have a problem? Just being in our heads, being stuck in our heads, whether it's self-criticism or over-analysis or indecision or anxiety, right? All kinds of things are going on in our heads all the time, and it seems that our society really promotes this because the way that we're basically taught to be in the world is to be very concerned with competition, concerned with how we're doing in comparison to other people, being concerned about whether we're performing well enough to be promoted, whether we're going to, be loved enough by the people around us, whether we're pleased, All of these things are constantly going round and round and round, and consequently can be very difficult to leave that terrain to be in our bodies. But science has shown us that we cannot really find any kind of peace or happiness or calm unless we learn how to be in our bodies in the here and now. Our immunity depends upon the healthy functioning of our immunity depends on our ability to be in the here and now. Okay? So we need to cultivate this. My way of cultivating this is using pleasure, a technique called pleasure layering. And there's a couple of videos in this series. This is part 3 in the series. A couple of other videos that go over pleasure layering, but I'll do a review here in the context, of course, of how to use this to get out of our heads. Get out of our heads. So pleasure layering is essentially a mindfulness technique, but it's a super fun mindfulness technique, and it's not anything that you really have to add because you already probably have enough of a pleasure practice going on that you can simply expand upon in a quite mild and easy way. All right? So what we want to do is we want to capitalize on the body's natural tendency to move toward pleasure. And you're probably doing this already. You probably have something that you do on a daily basis that is giving your body a little bit of pleasure. So that could be some coffee or tea, right? Maybe that morning cup especially. It could be what happens when you press the snooze button, right? And you're just in that delicious, really comfy, place in your warm bed. It could be something that you do a little more intentionally, like stretching, right? Just stretching the body, giving yourself a little bit of some kind of a nice position that feels good. It could be a treat, that you maybe tend to have on a daily basis. Maybe you have a little 10 o'clock snack or 4 p.m. snack, right? So any of these things that are already in your life are going to be the best place to start. The best place to start. And pleasure layering is just about starting somewhere and then doing this little easy expansion. All right? So let's say that we are having our cup of coffee, right? But the brain is going. right? So we've already have the pleasure practice. What we want to do is we want to see if we can just use our other sensory apparatus to just see if we can ground a little bit more in the coffee or tea. It's like a seesaw, right? On one side, you've got this sensory experience. You are in your body, right? But on the other side of the seesaw is the brain that's taking you out of your body, which is making it difficult for you to actually enjoy this fully. So you want to see if you can tip the seesaw a little bit. And the way to tip the seesaw is just to add a little bit more sensory information. So you've got the tea, let's say, right? And maybe it's just or the coffee, and it's just all about the sips, all about the caffeine perhaps. But if you just tune in to the feeling of the cup, the shape of the cup, the temperature, there is a lot of information here that you can actually focus on, because this is a focus exercise. But there's already pleasure going on, right? Because you love this particular way of making your coffee or your tea in the morning, for example, or you've got just the right blankets on your bed. So you already have something that can pull you back into your body, as long as we give ourselves a little bit more sensory input. If you're in bed, maybe it's just rubbing your legs together, or taking those blankets and maybe even feeling the texture of the blanket. Just see if you can find as much sensory information or stimulate the senses as much as you can with just this initial pleasure. Okay? Just the initial pleasure. All right. If we can do that, we might start to feel that little tip of the seesaw a bit more. And now we're going to facilitate that by adding yet another pleasure. Yet another pleasure. In the first video on pleasure layering, I said you could just do this really easily. Let's say starting with the cup, and then land your eyes on something that has some interest or is even pretty or beautiful. It could be something you have in your home that you love. It could be something outside that you see. Maybe a tree that's going through some kind of transformation perhaps. Or you can put on your headphones and put on a favorite piece of music, right? But there's some other delight, some other pleasure that you've now added to the equation to help you get into the body, to help you to breathe a little bit more. And now, once we have maybe a little more of a feeling of being in our body, we want to savor that as much as we can. And a good way to do that is to tune into our breath. Slow it down intentionally. But don't lose the fact that you've got some yummy coffee or tea going on, or you're like in that yummy place in the bed, right? So you can keep going back to the pleasures to help to ground you. They're anchors. They're anchoring you back into your body in a way that is self-perpetuating even, because the body does want pleasure, it does crave pleasure, it does move toward pleasure. We just need to give it enough of that pleasure by shifting out of, maybe this realm, by anchoring a little bit more into that, so that the body's going, yeah, I don't want all of that this decision thing going on in the head. I just want to be here with my tea. I just want to be here with my coffee, or I just want to just lie here a few more minutes in bed and see that nice view out my window. All right, so we practice this a few times, and then we can use this whenever we do find ourselves maybe in our heads excessively. We can just pick up that initial pleasure. Maybe it's a treat. Maybe you go and get yourself a cup of coffee or tea or something nice to drink so that we can have that first pleasure. And if we do this on a repetitive basis, we train the brain. We train our brains to associate that initial pleasure with a feeling of consequential relaxation, right? As a consequence of this, the body knows now it's going to maybe relax a little bit. So choose your pleasure number one. And maybe the second pleasure, choose that as well, so that once you've got your coffee or tea, or you're going to do this in bed, just maybe in your mind already know that that second pleasure you're going to bring in is going to be a visual, for instance, or it's going to be a piece of music that you put on, or it's going to be a scent. Maybe you light a candle. So just see if you can, figure out which of the senses you will stimulate or please through that second sense. And then just see if you can tap into the body and see if you can notice the body start to slow down, or facilitate that maybe by taking some deep breaths to add to these pleasures. And as I said, any time that you find yourself just in your head, turn to that first pleasure and do that practice as a grounding. And it can become just second nature. It can be second nature, a way to regulate your emotions, a way to just take a time out, a way to just take a deep breath or rejuvenate yourself, especially throughout a stressful day. It doesn't have to take long. Like I said, could take just a couple of minutes to just ground in that way. And that is how to get out of your head using pleasure layering. So in the comments below, let me know how this went, ask any questions, and I hope that you will subscribe to this channel where I speak about all manner of pleasure. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.